This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, plus special features and reports with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
In it to win it. Good afternoon. Welcome to the broadcast. New York North Country GOP Congresswoman Elise Stefanik announcing today she's running for governor. She made that announcement in a narrated online video.
Elise Stefanik for governor. It's time to save New York.
Stefanik says one-party rule has made the Empire State the most unaffordable state in America.
We also have a crime crisis because Kathy Hochul has brought us failed bail reform and has embraced the defund the police Democrats.
Governor Hochul calls Stefanik a rubber stamp for President Trump. The last Republican elected governor of New York was George Pataki way back in 2002. Now to Washington, where the U.S. Senate will try today for a 15th time to end the 38-day-old government shutdown, the longest shutdown in history. Reporter Nicole Killian.
Democrats met together to kind of discuss what their options may be in terms of a potential off-ramp. You have some moderates who do want to try to move forward in trying to end this stalemate, but others who are more dug in, who feel they want to hold out for a little bit more.
Senate Majority Leader John Thune says the GOP stopgap measure funds the government through January and fully funds for a year food assistance programs. Louisiana's John Kennedy, though, not hopeful that a breakthrough is possible.
Around here, it's not what you say, it's what you do that shows what you believe, and everything else is just cottage cheese. I think we're going to be shut down at least 10 more days, maybe 2 weeks, maybe longer than that.
Democrats are demanding an extension of Obamacare subsidies before they'll agree to reopen the government. Republicans argue open the government first, then we'll talk. The shutdown showdown impacting the airline industry. Flights are being canceled starting today.
The FAA has ordered airlines to reduce the number of flights by 4% starting today, ramping up to 10% next week at the nation's busiest airports, including Atlanta, Denver, Dallas, Orlando, Miami, and San Francisco. The National Air Traffic Controller Association President Nick Daniels says staffing issues are getting worse as they've now missed 2 paychecks, and some workers are having trouble paying for gas, food, and childcare.
That's Fox's Jessica Rosenthal. Aviation expert Chris Van Cleve continues our coverage.
These are major airports, the busiest in the country. This will impact cargo carriers, passenger airlines, even private jets.
The FAA cutting 4,000 flights a day to reduce fatigue among air traffic controllers. The Trump administration is appealing a federal court ruling that forces the White House to fund SNAP programs that have been sidelined by the shutdown. Vice President J.D. Vance.
What we'd like to do is for the Democrats to open up the government. Of course, then we can fund SNAP, and we can also do a lot of other good things for the American people. But in the midst of a shutdown, we can't have a federal court telling the president how he has to triage this situation.
A judge in Rhode Island last night ruled SNAP benefits must be paid out in full for the entire month of November. A recent Gallup poll shows Democrats as a whole favor socialism over capitalism. Political pundit Jason Miller says young Democrats are driving that trend.
What they're trying to do effectively is have government take over everything. So the first thing we normally think of is what it costs to live. And so along come the democratic socialists like Zohran Mamdani says we're going to give everything away for free. And many young people at the age of instant gratification, they just want everything handed to them. They don't realize what the ramifications are.
The survey shows 66% of Democrats have a favorable view of socialism. Just 42% have a favorable view of capitalism. Several people fell ill yesterday after a suspicious package was opened up at Joint Base Andrews in Maryland. That's home base for Air Force One. The package contained an unknown white powder. The base was temporarily locked down. The investigation is ongoing. The U.S. military has blown another suspected drug boat out of the water in the Caribbean. 3 suspected narco-terrorists were killed. President Trump's threatening to send ground ground troops into Venezuela now, where much of these drugs are coming from. Reporter Christopher Cruz gets congressional reaction.
Maryland Democrat Chris Van Hollen said President Nicolas Maduro is a plague on his own people, but attacking Venezuela is the wrong way to go.
We have learned from history that bombs don't turn dictatorships into democracies.
Christopher Cruz, Washington.
A Virginia jury's awarded a first-grade teacher $10 million after she was shot by a student.
Abby Werner survived a gunshot, 6 surgeries, and a bullet still lodged near her heart. Thursday, nearly 3 years later, she won in court.
This could have been prevented.
The former first-grade teacher and her attorneys convinced the jury her former assistant principal was negligent and didn't prevent a 6-year-old student from opening fire in the classroom.
CBS's Scott McFarland. Stuck in space. A trio of Chinese astronauts will be staying in orbit longer than planned.
3 astronauts living on the Chinese space station since April have now learned that their ship home has been damaged by space debris. China's space agency says an assessment is underway, but there's no estimated date yet for their return. There have been suggestions online that Elon Musk and his SpaceX company come to their rescue. I'm Rory O'Neill.
Elon Musk is closer to becoming the world's first trillionaire. Tesla shareholders have approved an ambitious pay package, but only if Musk delivers on ambitious milestones. For starters, 20 million of his electric cars must be sold, and Musk must deploy 1 million humanoid robots before that $1 trillion net worth is realized. A new report says U.S. businesses laid off more than 153,000 workers last month, making it the worst October in 22 years. That's about a 183% increase from September. Business analyst Kelly O'Grady says it's not all bad news, though.
This doesn't account for the hiring that was done in parallel. This is just looking at the layoffs. Now, by no means is that an amazing number. That is certainly bad, and it's not a good sign of where things are going. But a lot of this is companies saying, okay, we overhired during the pandemic. We're going to scale back a little bit. We're going to try and cut costs.
The price you pay for popular weight loss drugs is coming down. Drugs like Ozempic or Wegovy can cost as much as $1,000 a month. But the Trump administration yesterday struck a deal with drug makers to lower that cost substantially for Medicare and Medicaid recipients. Well, it's been around since the year 1818.
Be sure to consult the Farmer's Almanac for your region's extended weather forecast for the entire year ahead.
Sad to say, however, the 208th edition of the Farmer's Almanac will be its last. The publisher says it's ending the Farmer's Almanac because of financial challenges caused by a, quote, chaotic media environment, end quote. The Rockefeller Center Christmas tree is on its way to New York City. That 75-foot tall Norway spruce was cut down in East Greenbush near Albany. The most famous Christmas tree in America will arrive in Midtown Manhattan tomorrow. The tree lighting ceremony will happen Wednesday, December 3rd. Still to come on the Noon Report, Stefanik jumps in, SUNY helps out, and snowflakes next week.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams. We head into the start of the weekend with some rain. We come out of the weekend in some areas with some snow. Forecast details are coming up in 10.
All right, Kevin, we'll be sure to stay tuned for that. As mentioned at the top of the broadcast, the GOP's Elise Stefanik officially a candidate for governor next year.
The Republican congresswoman, who has repeatedly called Governor Hochul the worst governor in America, released a pre-recorded, narrated video on social media to announce her campaign for governor.
With everything on the line, we need someone who will deliver results and make New York affordable and safe for families and small businesses to not just survive, but thrive.
Stefanik, who represents the 21st District of New York, has been a fierce ally of President Trump and a forceful opponent against Hochul and New York City's mayoral-elect Zohran Mamdani. I'm Natalie Migliori.
A Lancaster County, Pennsylvania man accused of kidnapping his 6 children after learning they were going to be taken away by social services. 39-year-old Robert Christensen of Elizabethtown informed on Wednesday that his children were being removed due to suspected abuse. house. Cops arrested Christensen 170 miles away from his home in Cambria County. He's now facing 6 counts of kidnapping. A public hearing held last night on the future of Micron in central New York. The state wants to give the computer chip maker a 49-year tax break, totaling billions of dollars. Local residents like this woman tell Spectrum News that's just not fair.
Micron is getting upwards of $22 billion in tax incentives between federal, state, and local agencies, and that money could be going to local communities.
Micron hopes to start developing the site in the town of Clay soon. They hope to build several semiconductor facilities and make central New York the central hub for computer chip making in North America. A squatter will spend the rest of his life behind bars for the murders of 2 handymen in Buffalo. Dale Cummings shot to death these construction workers from Bangladesh in the spring of last year. Erie County DA Michael Keene.
They were 2 handymen that had gone to this home where Cummings was essentially holding up and living without anybody's permission. And when they got there, they were essentially ambushed by Cummings.
The victims were killed while doing repair work on an upper floor apartment at that residence. The squatter used an illegal weapon to carry out the crime. A new law in Pennsylvania changes how schools report weapons-related security incidents.
Before Senate Bill 246 was signed, Pennsylvania school districts did not have to let guardians or parents know if weapons were brought onto campus or to school-related events. Notification was only required when there was an expulsion for having the weapon. Now, districts are required to be transparent anytime there is a weapons offense incident. Governor Josh Shapiro signed the bill into law on Thursday after it passed the Senate earlier in the term. It will go into effect in 60 days. Brian Query, Family Life News.
Thanks, Brian. New York Governor Kathy Hochul's encouraging SUNY students to take part in a Day of Hunger action today. It's aimed at helping families who face food insecurity. More than 500 SUNY students at 45 campuses are helping out today at food banks and food pantries all over the state. Local airports are bracing for delays as the FAA cutbacks on flights begin. It's all because of the government shutdown. The cancellations are due to a shortage of air traffic controllers. They're calling in sick because they're not getting paid. Andy Moore's in charge of the Frederick Douglass International Airport in the city of Rochester.
We can only control so much, but we're ready. We understand what the difficulties are, and I would just recommend to passengers, just be in touch with your airline leading up to your travels. Have some phone numbers of the airlines in case there's any hiccups.
Moore says currently flights are running on schedule, but that could change as those major hubs start to feel the impact of these flight cuts. Hikers and hunters heading into the Pennsylvania woods had better beware. A tiny pest still looms large. The Pennsylvania Tick Research Lab says tick numbers are way up from last year.
A lot of people are used to maybe seeing 1 or 2 ticks on them during this time of the year, but now they're seeing like 10 to 15 on them, pulling a lot off their dogs.
Lab Director Nicole Chinnessy telling WNEP bites from ticks carry a cocktail of concern.
Half of these ticks are going to be infected, and about 1 in 10 of them are going to be co-infected. So a lot of them are carrying more than one tick-borne illness. It's Lyme disease, it's anaplasmosis, it's babesiosis. We're seeing a little bit more Powassan virus in our tick population this year, and that could be transmitted within 15 minutes of a tick bite.
Her lab is housed at East Stroudsburg University and samples up to 500 ticks every day. A funeral service was held this morning in Lyons, New York, for a World War II pilot who was killed in action 83 years ago. Army Staff Sergeant John Pugluso was just 24 when he was shot down over Papua New Guinea in October of 1942. He remained missing in action until a positive DNA match was made in March of this year. For the past 8 decades, Pugluso had been buried in an unmarked grave at a military cemetery in the Philippines. Today, he's being buried next to his mom and dad at the Elmwood Cemetery in Lyons, New York. Sports next. We call it the 2-minute drill on Family Life.
Good afternoon, I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, it was a defensive battle on the Thursday night football matchup, and the Broncos D was a little better than the Raiders D. Denver won the game 10-7. They are now 8-2 on the season. They've won 7 straight games and are in first place in the AFC West. A big game coming up for them, though, next weekend as they will play the Kansas City Chiefs. On to hockey in Buffalo. The Sabres dropped their second straight contest and were shut out for just the second time this season, 3-0, falling to the Blues. In Pittsburgh, the Penguins fared much better, getting a pair of goals from Sidney Crosby. Anthony Mantha, Brian Rust, and Connor Dwyer also scored as Pittsburgh beat the Caps 5-3. The Pens moved to 9-4-2 on the season. Matvei Mishkov, Noah Cates, and Travis Konechny all lit the lamp for the Flyers, and Philly won their contest against the Predators in Nashville. 3-1 the final. Flyers 8-5-1 on the season. Elsewhere on the ice, the Bruins 3-2 overtime winners against Ottawa. The Devils also won in overtime 4-3 against the Canadiens. Carolina edged Minnesota 4-3. The Ducks, in a high-scoring affair, outlasted the Stars 7-5. Golden Knights fell to the Lightning 6-3 in Florida, a 5-2 victor over the Kings. On the hardwood in the NBA, just one game on the docket. Jalen Green, playing in his first game with Phoenix, scored 29 points to lead the Suns over the Clippers 115-102. Devin Booker chipped in with 24. That is a look at sports.
Thank you, Randy Madden. Still to come on the Noon Report, election aftermath. The Capitol Connection crew weighs in on Tuesday's vote. Right after this.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. According to various media reports, the U.S. is considering launching airstrikes against Venezuela after a series of raids on alleged drug smugglers and hints from the Trump administration that regime change is needed. Now, whatever immediate warrants there are for an attack, the crisis in Venezuela has been growing for decades now. According to a 60 Minutes report last week, and I quote, "Freedom isn't the only thing in short supply in Venezuela. Hunger, chronic blackouts, scarcity of essential medicines all plague Venezuela. Today, more than 70% of residents live in poverty, a stunning reversal of fortune for a nation that was once one of the wealthiest countries in the world," end quote. The reason it was so wealthy is that Venezuela sits on the world's largest oil reserves, with an estimated 302 billion barrels. As a comparison, that's 10% more than Saudi Arabia and significantly more than the capacity of the U.S., which is about 43 billion barrels. In other words, Venezuela should be swimming in wealth as it was not that long ago. Today, it's on the edge of economic collapse. Now, at least part of the problem is that Venezuela has become a petrostate, a nation with so much profit-making petroleum they felt little need to diversify their economy and instead became dependent just on oil. Petrostates are highly susceptible to market swings and disruptions in the supply chain. Even more importantly, the governments of petrostates tend to ignore their citizens. In 1999, after time in jail for a failed military coup, Hugo Chavez was elected president of Venezuela. He promised liberation, earned the praise of left-leaning people in Hollywood and elsewhere. But the rhetoric never lined up with the reality. Rather than improve the lot of his people, his policies only made things worse. Like most dictators, Chavez and his cronies lived quite comfortably while the nation struggled. Whether American intervention or threats of intervention will make things better for Venezuelans in the long run remains to be seen. What's certain is that Venezuelans deserve better. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
Thank you, John. Outside we go, Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life weather forecast. It will be cloudy this afternoon with some rain or showers moving into the area and stiff breezes. High temperatures 50s to near 60. Showers depart tonight, low temps dropping toward 40. Tomorrow, maybe a morning sprinkle, otherwise a lot of clouds, a break of afternoon sun. High in the 50s to near 60. Sunny is cloudy with rain. High temperatures 40s and 50s, but with falling temperatures later in the day. Rain flips to snow in parts of western central New York and northwest Pennsylvania by later Sunday or Sunday night.
All right, won't that be fun? The wet turning white. Thanks, Kev. It's Friday, folks. Congratulations, you have made it. And this is the Noon Report on Family Life. This is Capitol Connection. Fridays during the Noon Report, we give you direct connection to all that's happening in Albany and Harrisburg with the experts on the issues at the state capitals. They are, as always, Michael Gear with the Pennsylvania Family Institute and Jason McGuire at New York Families. Well, gentlemen, the people have spoken. The results are in. The dust has settled on Election Day 2025. A lot of places to go here, Jason, but I want to begin with that big mayoral contest in New York City. How does a guy with Zohran Mamdani's credentials get to be the mayor of New York City? And a follow-up to that is, what does that portend when it comes to the 2026 midterms?
Well, ideological differences aside, let me speak to the strengths of the Zohran Mamdani campaign. For one, he energized many new voters. Over 2 million people turned out to vote in this election. That is a number that New York City had not seen since 1969. So he brought people into this race that were not voting. He's bringing a new generation in. He always smiled. He carried himself with optimism and hope. And unfortunately, I think we live in a day today in which people will choose rhetoric over results. Much of what he has said he can accomplish in his term, he will not be able to do, at least not to the level that he sold during the campaign. But people heard the rhetoric, and they opted for that over the results.
Yeah.
So that's how we get socialism in New York City.
Yeah. There was a poll out recently, Jay, a quick follow-up, and then we'll go to Michael. 66% of Democrats think socialism is a perfectly acceptable alternative to capitalism. Will this message of socialism catch on?
Well, I think it obviously already is. I mean, we're seeing it in the trends. We're seeing it among young people today. And there are some real concerns there. We talk about affordability, the ability to buy a home. The American dream, in many ways, does seem to be slipping away from a younger generation as they watch inflation, as they watch so many things with student debt and other issues that the new Democrats are speaking to. Yeah. And that is having an effect on those younger voters.
Yeah, Michael, I know you're upset about the retention elections with those 3 liberal Supreme Court justices. An uphill battle all the way. Maybe the margin of victory is what's disappointing people who wanted to see those judges tossed. It looks like about a 2-to-1 margin. They will keep their jobs. Your thoughts overall on the big vote there Tuesday night?
Well, as you mentioned, as significant as the implications were in this retention vote on issues like abortion, redistricting, and election integrity, a no vote on a Supreme Court retention election, a successful no vote, has only happened once in Pennsylvania history. So it was a tall order in the first place. But the second thing is big money came into the race late in the game with a reported more than $20 million being spent on the race. Most of it from Democrats on the yes side. Planned Parenthood weighed in with their money and their endorsement. Lastly, there's the low voter turnout in these odd year elections, but more turnout in the big cities because of the mayoral races and DA races, which also benefited the Democrat justices in their retention vote.
Yeah, so much of what you fight for, Michael, is parental rights and education. The school board votes, I know there's a lot of them, but overall, when you look across the Commonwealth, were you satisfied with those votes on Tuesday?
Well, I guess I would say some good, some bad. There are 500 school districts in the Commonwealth, so it's hard to sum it up simply across the board. In the races that we were watching closely, we were pleased for the most part with many of the results. But given that on Election Day, many public schools, especially in the major metro areas, were closed for the day, teachers and school employees had the day off, and the teachers union virtually always backed the leftist candidates. So it can be tough in certain areas for sensible conservatives to get their message and the voters out on their behalf.
Jason, was this a referendum on the Trump presidency? I know his approval rating is underwater, and especially you look at those results out of New Jersey, not so much Virginia, because I think a lot of folks were expecting that one, but the margin of victory in New Jersey was telling. How much did Trump fatigue have on this race?
I think there certainly was some impact with the Trump fatigue, as you call it, was in his last election results. But I'll go further than that. I think it is more the fact that President Trump was not on the ballot that failed to energize Republican voters. So while the Trump fatigue may have energized Democrat voters and some independents, the fact that President Trump was not on the ballot meant that many Republicans simply did not show up. I've knocked on doors collecting petitions where people were refused to sign petition signatures for any other candidate than President Trump, indicating they will not vote for anyone but President Trump. I think that is a problem that the Republican Party is going to have to reckon with in the years to come.
Yeah. Michael, when you look at it, what are the lessons learned for Republicans following what can only be described as a stinging defeat Tuesday night?
Yeah, it was challenging across the state when we look at especially municipal elections, even in my own area, which has been historically Republican, swinging very heavily into the Democrat side of things. The lessons learned are, number one, elections swing back and forth very significantly, and so we can't really even, I think today, predict what 2026 is going to look out. There's a lot of water that's going to have to go over the dam, as it were, in the next year to see what happens. But I think some of the issues that Jason talked about in terms of affordability, the fact that government spending has not been really reduced in any significant way creates this inflation, which creates the affordability problems. And those are some of the big challenges that I think both parties are going to have to deal with to figure out how to restore the American dream.
Yeah, Michael, back to you, and then we'll go to Jason on other ballot initiatives. But Virginia and New Jersey are close proximity to Pennsylvania, the battleground state. A lot of folks thought New Jersey would be a lot closer than it ended up being. Does that, just because of the geographical closeness to Pennsylvania, does that portend anything about next year's midterms in PA?
I'm not sure it does. I think there are some lessons to look at in New Jersey. I mean, one of the things, that Jack Ciattarelli, the Republican candidate for governor in New Jersey, came very close 4 years ago, but in that time he was running against an incumbent right after COVID. And so there was somebody that you could point to and say, that guy has made it bad for us in terms of the incumbent governor. There was no sort of specific enemy, if you will, or opponent to point to in that sort of way, since it was a new candidate on the Democrat side. Here in Pennsylvania, it's going to be what happens in the budget cycle, what Governor Shapiro is doing on the presidential race that may be a factor that would allow for something different to happen here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, of course, there's also the ballot initiatives, Jason. I want to bring up Prop 50 in California because that, to me, was probably the big headline of Tuesday night. Doesn't get the attention that the Zohran Mamdani race does or the gubernatorial contest. But is this the future of how redistricting gets done? Because now California approving this measure, which could mean 5 seats for Democrats in 2026. We're hearing states like Missouri and Florida may do the same for Republicans. Is this any way to govern in America? Your thoughts on Prop 50 and this whole redistricting mess overall?
Well, generally, I hope this is not the direction that America is going on both sides, right or the left, red or blue. I want to see normalcy in how we do this process. And historically, it's been that 10-year process. We do redistricting every 10 years. I hope we can return to some normalcy in that regard. But right now, it feels like an arms race with each side trying to raise more and more seats to get to a strengthened majority. And I do think in light of Prop 50's passage in California, the biggest winner of that is Governor Gavin Newsom, who's positioning himself as the anti-Trump candidate and probably is moving to the front of potential challengers now to run against whoever runs the Republican side for president the next time around.
Yeah, Michael, I want to ask you that same question about congressional redistricting. I know that was one of the reasons why you fought so hard for these retention elections was happening in Pennsylvania. But as Jason mentioned, this is typically a once-a-decade process, not anymore. How do we rein in this partisan gerrymandering that has such a profound effect on our politics?
Well, it's a real challenge. Those Pennsylvania Supreme Court justices that were just retained back in 2018, they intervened in the middle of an election season using a lawsuit brought by the League of Women Voters to redraw congressional district lines in a way that favors Democrats. So that was almost 10 years ago. That was in the middle, not at the normal 10-year interval. So it's been happening for a while, as gerrymandering has. But I think we do, as Jason said, I would like to see a return to the rule of law to at least do the standard every 10 years. I know, and to follow the law. Every party is going to try to skew things in their direction, but to do it in the way that is happening now is just, I think, unjust and wrong.
All right, and that'll have to be the last word this week. But if you have questions about any of the issues discussed on today's program, our election aftermath edition of Capital Connection. Michael, you have a wonderful website at PA Family Institute. Where can folks find you online?
PAFamily.org.
And stay informed in New York as well. Jason, where can folks find you?
NewYorkFamilies.org.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. Capital Connection, the name of the program, comes your way every Friday during the Noon Report or online anytime at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or our website, familylife.org.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. A complicated weather pattern continues. We've got a front low pressure delivering rain to parts of the area as we head into the afternoon and evening hours. It'll move quickly away, and it's mostly dry for tomorrow. The next system is more potent and will have cold air with which to work. It's going to deliver rain Sunday, rain that'll flip to snow in some areas, followed by the coldest air of the season to date and localized lake snows early next week. It will be cloudy this afternoon with some rain or showers moving into the area and stiff breezes. High temperatures 50s and near 60. Showers depart tonight, low temps dropping toward 40. Tomorrow, maybe a morning sprinkle, otherwise a lot of clouds, a break of afternoon sun, high in the 50s and near 60. Sunday is cloudy with rain, high temperatures 40s and 50s, but with falling temperatures later in the day. Rain flips to snow in parts of western, central New York and northwest Pennsylvania by later Sunday or Sunday night.
All right, great work at the Weather Center. Thank you, Kevin. And finally, the saying goes, you can't please everyone, but in one British town, it seems like you can't please anyone. Here's correspondent Vicki Barker.
With Christmas almost on its way, a few folks here in jolly old England have already begun honoring that old English tradition, complaining about their town Christmas tree. The one in Wisbech, Eastern England, for instance, is
diabolical. Absolutely diabolical. Not even straight.
It does tilt a bit to starboard.
That's on the wonk. Do you know what I mean?
And, well, it is turning brown.
I mean, there's more dead than that. Well, there is grief.
But others in Wisbech are following that old English motto, mustn't grumble.
Lots of decorations and a bit of fake snow and it look beautiful. Just make it look glorious in whatever shape or form it comes.
Wisbech's town council confirms this tree has to go.
All right, thank you very much. Vicki Barker in London for us today. And that's our world, the world we live in. Friday, November 7th. Have a wonderful weekend. I'm Bob Price, Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.